they're in the middle of the 100 Years' War, right? That was all last week. And this France is going to stay Catholic. Does anybody remember how France stays Catholic? Was it because there was no big Protestant movement within France? We covered that last week too. Who can remember what happened? Week before that, sorry. You're right. There's no way you remember 2 weeks ago. So France tries to go Protestant, but the government stomps it out. Remember, they kill them all off. They kill up to 700,000 or 800,000 people in order to keep France as Catholic. Okay? That's when we talked about our Waldenses and our Huguenots and them all deciding to get on boats and come to the Calvinists, right? Legina was telling us that there's still a big, there's still a big presence of them, or there's at least a memorial of them in the Carolinas today? A museum?
It's in the city of Valleys.
Okay. There you go. They're still there? So you can go to a Waldense church over there?
They have
Yeah.
that,
Yeah? That's cool.
like a play, I think in the summertime, something that the Waldenses.
That's cool. So they actually have a Waldensian church.
They keep it alive.
That might be worth going to see one day if we're ever over there. How about that? That would be fun. Doctrinally, they're not too far from where we are. They're pretty close to where we are, almost doctrinally. So, I think, at least they were during this time. I don't know where they are now, 300 years later. Who knows? They may be having liberal problems like all the other denominations. So, okay, all right. So we talked about them. France is going to stay Catholic. We talked about Scotland. Scotland is going to go Protestant under the leadership of a man by the name of John Knox. He is a hot-headed Reformed preacher. Okay, so he would have been Calvinistic, right? He would have been a Calvinist, but he has the temper of Luther. Okay, so put those two together, and you got a pretty deadly combination. Of course, the Scots are quite known for being rather unruly throughout history, anyways. And then, of course, that puts pressure on England, right? So England has got some problems going on too. So under let's talk about the Dutch real quick, the Netherlands. Scroll down on the Netherlands for me, Dakota. Let's test your geography again. It's our weekly. There you go. We got it. All right, you remember from last week. Okay. So the Netherlands, aka the lowlands is what it's called, is very defensible because it happens to be mostly swamp in between, like where Antwerp and all that is, just south of that. There's natural swamps and stuff like that. It makes it really hard for people to navigate through there because they didn't have the roads that we have and bridges that we have today. Well, during this time, the Dutch are under the control of Spain, and they're trying to break away from that, right? And so they've become under the control of the Spanish monarch. And so it's that desire plus when Protestantism hits there, a lot of the Scots, whenever persecution broke back out in England, and they try to, when Bloody Mary says to make England Catholic again, a lot of the people in England jump across the English Channel and go to the Netherlands, right? And so a huge amount of Protestants wind up there, right? And so from there, they're going to wind up jumping on the boats and coming across the colonies, right? And becoming the founders of America. But during this time, during the time of Luther, during the 1500s, the Dutch are actually in a golden era. They rule the seas. And no navy can stand up to them. They're beating the French and the English and the Spanish navies. They're beating them all in combat. They had a certain admiral by the name of Michael de Ruyter. If you never heard of him, I suggest you go watch a movie called The Admiral that's about him. I remember I made the Gasantes watch it when we were all living in San Carlos. Remember that? You remember that? Big fat Dutch guy with a big fat nose. Remember that guy? Anyways, it's a foreign film. You'll have to read all the subtitles. But I had no idea who he was until I watched the movie. And then after watching the movie, I was like, okay, I'll go do some research on the guy. Surely they blew this out of proportion. And they didn't actually. He's a larger-than-life character that no one could stand toe-to-toe with him at the time. He was actually a Protestant. He was part of the Presbyterian Church, right, or the Calvinist Reformed branch of the Reformation. So the Dutch Golden Era is taking place, right? So they're massively expanding in trade. They're also starting to trade with the whole world. As they're doing this, they're sending out missionaries. Missionary organizations are starting to pop up in the Netherlands here. And correct me if I'm wrong, but William Carey is from the Netherlands, isn't he? He's Dutch, I think. I need to Google that and check that with me, but I'm pretty sure he's from this area. Look up where William Carey was from. It wouldn't be for centuries later, I think, that he would show up after the Reformation. At least one century. So wait, see if we can get a response. What does the great omniscient Google tell us?
He's from the UK.
From the UK? Okay, there you go. All right. All right. Okay, so, all right, so he's not from the Netherlands, but close, just right across the channel. So, all right, so anyways, with Spain being Catholic and the Netherlands getting a lot of Protestant population, and also the Netherlands wanting to become its own thing, there is a revolution that starts in the Dutch area here, right, in the lowlands. And that is a really big war that breaks out between Spain and the Dutch, and the English and the French get involved. That's all wrapped up in part of the 30 Years' War as well, right? So, but a big part of Spain's motivation in that was, one, to regain control of the Netherlands, but also to force converting back to Catholicism as they did with France, right? So there was a very, very large religious element involved with that war, right? Okay. Again, we talk about the Reuter. One of the things that really makes him stand out, and this is going to kind of become a common theme among Protestants, is a lot of these military commanders that are Protestants are going to be like unparalleled from people before them, right? You know, even all the way to the American Civil War, where we get the guys like Lee and Jackson and things like that. They are well known for the quality of their character among their opponents, right? Even their enemies respect them for the type of men that they were. That was certainly the case with the Reuter. In fact, so the way his life ends, he's sent on a suicide mission because the Dutch monarch had decided that he had become too powerful, that he had too much influence, and so they sent him on a one-way trip to go fight in the Mediterranean, purposely sending him with only like 10 ships to go fight up against 200. And he followed orders and did what he was supposed to do anyways, because he was told his family would be protected as long as he carried out his orders. And if not, they were going to kill him all. So, but anyways, during that, he's wounded, his leg is shot off by a cannonball, and the flagship hoists the colors. I think it was a black flag, was a sign that the admiral had been killed. And as they sailed all the way back around Spain and France, the ships weren't like they were in the colony times. They would hug the coastline so they wouldn't get lost, right? And so as they sailed back, all the forts along the way fired their guns as a salute, just out of respect for him. But the English did not like him very much at all, right? One of the really cool things he did was he actually sailed his fleet up one of the English rivers into the harbor and burned their fleet in their harbor. Nobody thought that was possible, but he did. Right? In fact, on his grave, I think they still have the stern carving of the Royal Sovereign, which was the flagship of the Royal Navy at the time. And when they burned the fleet inside the harbor, a bunch of men went over there and knocked the stern carving off, and that's on his tomb even still today. So it's pretty cool. If you ever go to the Netherlands, go see his tomb, right? Okay, so yeah, the Netherlands is going to go reform, right? Let's talk about what happens in England. So England is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Reformation. It is Henry VIII who decides that he wants a divorce, and so he submits to the Pope, as was the custom throughout the medieval time period, that if you wanted a divorce, you had to have the Pope's blessing in order to get it. The Pope said, no, you're not going to be allowed a divorce, and so he decided to make his own church. And they're in England, so what are you going to do about it? You don't have a way to go here. So the Reformation in England would be based out of Henry VIII's desire for divorce and to remarry. And yes, this is the same Henry VIII that chops off the heads of all his wives because they won't give him the son, they keep giving him daughters, right? Turns out it's his fault in the end anyways. But yeah, so that's kind of summing it up. So, long story short, I mean, we need to go into all of his wives here. We've got Catherine of Aragon. Long story short, he keeps marrying all these other monarchs, family members from Aragon and Castile and all this, and he keeps killing them all because they don't give birth to a son. Let's see.
Then he only tried to divorce one.
No, let's see. We'll just read it. So, I'll just read it. That'll be fun. All right. Henry VIII, who ruled from 1509 to 1547, was a handsome, generous, strong, cultured prince who knew theology, was a good musician, and could speak Latin, French, and Spanish, so he's educated, as well as English. He enjoyed the chase, archery, and tennis as sports to help make him more popular with the English people. All right, his father had endeavored to relate his line to important royal families of Europe by strategic marriages. His daughter Margaret was married to James of Scotland. His great-grandson James IV of Scotland became James I of England in 1603. And his son Arthur was married to a Spanish princess, Catherine of Aragon. When Arthur died, in order not to lose Catherine's dowry, he persuaded Pope Julius II to grant a dispensation so that Catherine could be married to Arthur's younger brother. And Henry, in 1503, his younger brother James Henry as well. Why not? More Henrys. Just make more confusing. All right. Later, that child would rule as Mary Tudor. Okay? All right. Let's see if we can get some more info. When it became apparent that he could not have a son by his marriage, Henry became concerned because he believed that England would need a male to rule after his death in order to see the land through the period of international turbulence that was capturing the rest of Europe due to the Reformation. He also thought that possibly God was punishing him for marrying his brother's widow, an action prohibited by both canon law and Leviticus 20:21. Falling in love with the pretty Anne Boleyn, Henry ordered his advisor, Cardinal Wolsey, to negotiate with Clement VII for a divorce from Catherine. Clement VII was unable to grant the request because in 1527 he was under control of Catherine's nephew, the powerful Charles V, the ruler of Spain and the Emperor of Germany. Henry accused Wolsey of high treason when he failed to get the divorce, but Wolsey died before Henry could execute him. All right, so it turns out he doesn't like just chopping up the heads of his wives either, right? Turns out that some cardinals are involved too. This is where a famous English person is going to show up. We'll come across this guy's name, and this is another example of a commander that is going to be Protestant, that is well known for his character, and that's Thomas Cromwell. You ever heard of him? Yes. Okay. So Thomas Cromwell became Henry's chief minister in 1532. Protestant Thomas Cranmer was made the Archbishop of Canterbury in 1533. Because it was apparent that the Pope would not grant him a divorce, Henry decided to get it through English clergy, who could not lead to a curse, into granting it by Parliament. There we go. So he goes throughout the government for the divorce and not throughout of the Pope. The Tudor Parliament was representative of the people, but was responsible to the king rather than the people, because the Tudors ruled as dictators of England. The lay authority of Parliament and the Reformation Parliament ended papal control in the monasticism. So they decided, under Henry's leadership, to get rid of Catholicism as the state or religion in. Right? Okay. What else do we want to know about England here? England's going to have some pretty popular ministers come from it. let's talk about the Anglican Church real quick. In 1531, Henry accused the English clergy of violating a statute prohibiting recognition of any appointee of the Pope without the ruler's consent, because they had accepted Wolsey as the papal legate. Even though Wolsey had been Henry's trusted advisor, Henry had them accept himself as the head of the Church of England, as far as the law of Christ allows, was the quote. He also fined them over 118,000 pounds. So he got some money out of the deal. Let's see. He also made it so that the submission of the clergy was a thing, that they would not promulgate any papal bull of England without the ruler's consent. So he totally strips the Pope's authority in England, is what he does there. So in other words, guess what? The Pope issues a papal bull, which in other words, that's him saying, my word is the word of God, you must do what this says, right? That's a papal bull. And Henry tells him, yeah, well, that's only the word of God in England if I say it is. So, whoops. That doesn't work, does it? In this manner, the clergy accepted Henry as their head. So again, Anglican Church sees the monarch of England as the head of the church. And his marriage to Catherine was declared invalid in 1533 by Cranmer in his church court. Cranmer was able to do what the Pope and scholars failed to do. Henry married Anne Boleyn that same year, right? So don't they have like a little TV series out right now about all this, about the whole Tudor family thing? What's it called?
Oh, no, I don't,
There made tons of movies about this.
yeah. No, there's a play, too.
There's a play. Is this the content of some Shakespeare drama? Is that what's going on? Do what?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. All right. Let's see. Yeah, so it says here, in theology, the Church of England remained sure to Rome, but under source of authority, it totally changed, right? So they pretty much, when we say it's Catholic in all but name, that's what we mean. So they kept the same Catholic doctrines that were being taught at the time, right? Infant baptism and last rites, all those things, all those same practices that were done, transubstantiation, all that will continue in the Anglican Church, right? All right.
Back to your other thing.
Yeah.
The Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Malay, is not.
She's not a lesbian?
She's
Okay.
been married to her husband since the
All right. Not a lesbian. But the first female Archbishop of Canterbury. All right. Give us another 10 years. We'll be there.
Well, don't they already approve it?
I think, do they allow LGBTQ?
She's known for her theological positions regarding LGBT, whatever,
Yeah, there you go.
inclusion in the Church of England.
There you go. So she's pro-LGBTQ, even though she herself is not one. Yeah.
But the church is living in love and faith.
Oh, it's living in love, guys. Yeesh. Yes, yes. All right. Okay, so in the meantime, with all this stuff, Henry had tired of Anne Boleyn, especially because their child had been a girl, whom they named Elizabeth. So, all right. In 1536, Anne was tried and beheaded on charges of adultery. Then Henry next married Jane Seymour, who bore the son he had wanted before she died. Later, Henry married Anne of Cleves, whom he divorced. Turns out that I guess once the cat's out of the bag, it's out of the bag, guys. He just started marrying them all. He also executed this one, right? And then Catherine Howard, whom he also executed, and Catherine Parr, who had the singular fortune to outlive him. So only one of his wives outlived him.
Well, Anna Cleves, he divorced her, according to this. And she lives her
Yes,
life
it
in
does say
England
divorce.
as his beloved sister.
Yeah. As his sister?
What?
Oh.
Says she lived down her life in England as a king's beloved sister.
All right. So, in summation, it says here that Henry freed the church from the papacy but put it under royal control as the national church. In his will, he stated that after his death, his son Edward should take the throne. Edward would be followed by Mary, the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, and married by Elizabeth, the daughter of Anne Boleyn. When Henry finally died, the English church was a national church with a ruler as its head, but it was Roman Catholic in doctrine. The Bible was, however, available to the people in their own tongue. Henry's son Edward was to carry out the Protestant phase of the Reformation that Henry had begun as an ecclesiastical movement between 1527 and 1547. All right, so Edward's going to pick up the mantle there. Edward the Fourth. All right. We need to go over Mary Tudor. She's the one who tries to convert it back to Catholicism. There's a really cool story from that time period. Let's read about that. So, about 800 of the English clergy refused to accept Mary Tudor's attempt to turn England back to Catholic, so they straight up refused to the point of death. And they refused to accept these changes and lost their parishes. They were forced to flee to Geneva, and to Frankfurt for refugee if they were not to perish in the persecution that Mary initiated. Remember, this rush is called Bloody Mary. Over 275, mainly from the commercial areas of southeastern England, were martyred for their faith. Chief among them were Cranmer, Hugh Latimer, and Nicholas Ridley. So Latimer and Ridley, this is a neat story that comes out. If you have the Book of Martyrs or Jesus Freaks or whatever they're calling it nowadays, you can actually, their stories are in that book. But they're going to be burned at the stake, and it says, as the fires were being lit, Latimer said, "Be of good comfort, Master Ridley, and play the man. We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England as I trust, that it shall never be put out," in reference to the rebellion against the Catholic control, right? So that's what he said as the fires were being lit underneath him, okay? So they are the king. How about that? Okay, so Latimer encouraged Ridley at the stake by his remark at their burning that he would light a candle in England that by God's grace would never be put out. Cranmer at first recanted, but later recanted his recantation, so I guess he did that, when he was burned. Put the hand that had signed the, he recanted his recantation when he was burned. Put the hand that had signed the recantation in the fire until it was burned. Okay, there you go. How about that? Cranmer had given the English their great Bible, I'm assuming that's the name of it, the prayer book for worship, and the 42 articles, soon revised to become the 39 articles, which are still the creed of the Anglican Church. Nothing strengthened the cause of Protestantism more than the death of these great martyrs. Their earnest conviction and courage convinced Englishmen of the truth of their opinions. Fox's Book of Martyrs, 1563, recounts these persecutions in gory detail, and it aroused sympathy for Protestantism. Mary's great mistakes were the Spanish marriage, the restoration of the authority of the Pope, and this persecution. Englishmen have never favored extremes, and they reacted against Mary's extreme as some against the Protestant changes under Edward IV, and the way was prepared for a compromise settlement with the ascension of Elizabeth. Right? So it will be under Elizabeth that the Reformation finally settles in England, and England would indeed remain a Protestant state. All right? So, big bloody mess in England is what it boils down to. Okay? As is true for the rest of Europe as well. Okay? Elizabeth assumed the throne at the age of 25. She's faced with many problems. One of which is that Mary Stuart had a valid claim to the throne, so there's a problem. Spain was ready to intervene, to get Philip's claim to the English throne. Turns out, whenever all this intermarrying happens among all the royals, you run into a bunch of succession wars and battles. Let's see. England was divided between Protestant and Roman Catholic, right? And so that would be the big thing under her rule, is getting this issue settled. All right, it says here that Elizabeth could hardly be other than a Protestant. She's considered Protestant because the Roman clergy would not admit the legality of her parents' marriage, right? So in other words, Rome is saying that, well, she's not the true monarch because they didn't really get married, Henry and her mother. So, these other guys are the ones that need to sit on the throne. So that forces her into a Protestant camp. But she did not want to risk open conflict with the powers supporting the Pope. For that reason, she favored the course that would be acceptable to most of the people of England, who favored a moderate settlement of religion that would avoid extremes of either side. Elizabeth had Parliament pass the Act of Supremacy in 1559, which made the Queen the only supreme governor of this realm. So in other words, we're going to keep the Pope out in spiritual and ecclesiastical as well as temporal matters. This title gave less offense than that of the supreme head of the church, which Henry VIII had insisted on. Because while it gave the Queen administrative authority, it implied that matters of faith and morals should be settled by the Church of England. So we're starting to see the seeds of a separation between the government and the church. Remember, we're used to this. We've grown up with this idea. We've been taught this idea since we were in elementary school, that the government has no business in church affairs. It's because of this time period and what's happening, what we're reading about right now, that would become the norm, right? So you're seeing the seeds of this being planted. And it would turn out that all those people who jumped on the boat, come across the pond, start the colonies, really kind of like this idea of keeping the government out of the church, right? So, the Act of Uniformity provided for the use of the prayer book in 1552 with only slight modifications. Absence from the church was to be punished by a shilling fine. So if you didn't show up to church, you got a fine. How about that? I like this idea. We could fix our financial problems real quick here, guys. All right. The 42 articles were revised by the omission of the articles of condemnation, by the articles of the commendatory of the atonement. All right, help me out. Read that mess for me. Holy cow. What are they saying? You with me there on page 326? Say it again. Condemnatory? Okay. Antinomians? Okay, there you go. Antinomians, we'll talk about them. The Anabaptists and the millenarians. Those are all going to be radical reformation. Millenarians, yeah. Probably has to do with the millennial reign of Christ, but I think that's what it is. Yes. All right. So in other words, we're saying we don't like the radical reformation. Those guys are kind of crazy. So we'll stay away from those. These articles are accepted by Parliament in 1563 as a creed of the Anglican Church, and all pastors who are required to subscribe to it. This creed, with slight modifications in 1571, has been the creed of the Anglican Church since that time. Okay. By the way, Southern Baptists, you will see a trend there that would be followed for the Baptists during the conservative resurgence when in the 1980s when we started making seminary professors sign on to the Baptist Confession of Faith. And it sounds an awful lot like what the Church of England did here with these confessions. What's that? It is a creed, yeah. If you believe this, and we will let you teach here. If you don't believe this, we're not going to let you teach here.
Understandable.
Yes. Yeah, as it should be. We're paying your salary. You're being paid by the churches, right? Those schools are not independent of denomination money, right? The only way they can do that would be to become government-sponsored school, and they don't want to do that either.
No, so you're signing another creed.
Right, yeah, here, yeah. Going out of out of the skillet into the frying pan. Yeah. Okay, so this would eventually be settled through the works of Parliament in England. Okay, that summed up. Everyone satisfactory with that? So now we have zoom up on your map there. In fact, can you pull up one of those maps that we looked at of Protestantism during the Reformation? We had it pulled up last week. I didn't really pull it up this week. So we have France, which remains Catholic through the power of blood and fire. We have the Netherlands, which is going to go Protestant. We have England, which is going to go Protestant. We have Scotland, which is going to go Protestant. And they're in the southern part of France. That's where our Waldensi friends are, remember? And then, of course, the western part of France that borders Switzerland and also Switzerland itself, they're going to become Protestant. And, of course, Germany has a huge Lutheran uprising taking place there under Martin Luther. So they're going Protestant. And then Hungary, although Hungary is going to stay Catholic via the government stance, there's actually going to be a huge amount of conversion from Catholicism to Protestantism in Hungary, right? And don't forget that the Hungarians and the Austrians are also holding the Muslim hordes back over there on that front as well, okay? Poland, Lithuania, they're going to, of course, stay Catholic. There's actually a big brother coming into play that is going to go Protestant. We're not going to cover them, but they're going to play a huge part in the 30 Years' War, and that is Sweden, right? So Sweden is going to go Protestant. Let's see, what's their... zoom up on your map. It's hard for me to... I know I'm having trouble reading that. You are having trouble reading that. Oh. Well, pull back up your Protestant map. Sorry. Anybody able to tell what color Sweden is there? Lutheran. Yeah. In fact, remember that guy's name? He was in a video I watched last night. Google the name of the Lutheran king of Sweden during the 30 Years' War. See what pops. His name is, he's very famous. He's one of the, it's not a Wenceslas, no, he's what you got? Gustav. Yes.
Adolphus. Gustav II, Adolf.
Gustav, yeah, it's a Gustav.
Playing the line out of
That's it, yeah. Yep, Gustav Adolphus is his name? We'll ignore the Adolf part there.
It used to be the name.
Yeah, it used to be. Turns out. Talk about a name that gets retired, huh?
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, he's called the Lion in the North, right? That's what he's called? Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's start to jump into, we're covering the 30 Years' War without covering the 30 Years' War. That's kind of what we're doing here. All of these battles and persecutions that are breaking out that we're talking about the nations fighting each other, like the Netherlands and Spain, all that is lumped into what is called the 30 Years' War. But essentially, every nation in Europe, including Switzerland, not even Switzerland got to stay neutral on this one, guys, including Switzerland, would break out into some form of war over the Reformation. And most of the time, it is Protestants fighting Catholics and vice versa, right? It is, in fact, a lot of the time, when it starts, it's actually Catholic armies trying to reconvert Protestants back to Catholicism. So they adopt the Muslim tactic, right? You either convert or we're going to chop off your head or burn you to the stake. What are you going to do, right? In the case of Anabaptists, we're going to tie a rock around you and throw you in the river because you like being baptized, so we'll baptize you again. All right? And all of Europe, like the whole thing, is going to explode in war that's going to last for 30 years. In fact, the video I was watching yesterday said that Germany during this time, remember you've got the Holy Roman Empire right there, which is more or less modern Germany, okay? Or Germany during World War II. It's huge. The Holy Roman Empire goes all the way down to northern Italy, right? And pieces of the Netherlands, and it goes all the way over to the borders of Poland. They would lose up to, I believe it said, up to a fifth of their population during the 30 Years' War. That's how many people would die during the 30 Years' War. Once all the fighting broke out, once the war started, there was so much fighting and burning and killing that it actually caused a famine, which then caused people to start starving to death. And also during this time, there's another outbreak of plague that happens because conditions get so unsanitary that starts taking root as well. If you were alive during the 30 Years' War, you had to be thinking that this is the end, right? Christ is coming back at any moment. And you know, and that's also gives rise to the radical wing of the Reformation with the Anabaptists and where they would go with that kind of theology, with teaching that, hey, Christ is about to return. We're seeing all these things happen. He's coming back, so we need to do this in light of the world's going to end next year, right? So we need to do this, and it would usually be something that would be anti-biblical, like polygamy or whatever, right? And hey, we've lost so many men fighting in this war that we now have to have men marry more than one woman so that we can repopulate and keep our people going, right? That was how they would get to these conclusions. So, let me see what the book has to say here about the 30 Years' War. It's also during this time that the Habsburgs, I believe that's their names, Austrian Habsburgs and the Spanish Habsburgs, right? Those are all the big Habsburg family that's going to cause the big upset in the early 1900s, right? That this is the height of their power, okay? And they are very staunch Catholic, and they see a loss of the Catholic Church as a loss of their influence and their authority as well. And so that's also another reason for this war. The primary reason for the 30 Years' Wars is religious. It is due to the Reformation, but don't just leave it at it's only religious, because there's obviously more factors that come into play. Greed, political power, all the usual suspects that lead to war, land grabs, all that are all being brought into this as well. Okay? Yes. Let me look through here. Has anybody got any questions?
No, but I have an interesting fact.
Okay.
In the 16th century, it's estimated that 10 to 30% of the population read.
Okay.
Protestant regions prioritize reading the Bible in one's own language. And by the 1600s, countries like England, the Netherlands, and Germany saw rates reach 30 to 50%. But the Catholic regions were below 10%.
They stayed uneducated because they didn't want to read the scripture. Yeah.
Not all of
Yeah. No, the Reformation definitely gives birth to a lot of education that we see today that is still around. Like the push for education came from the desire for people to be able to read the Bible in their own language, right? And we saw that with Wycliffe and Tyndale and all those guys, right? And John Huss, right? The forerunners of the Reformation were the ones who translated it into the language of the people. So, yeah.
Well, I would say that is the push for homeschooling for education now. It's for children to have a true education.
Yeah.
To be able to read the Bible and understand it. And I see a great divide between modern education and homeschooling.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I would probably tend to agree that most of the people that are doing homeschooling are doing so for religious reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most,
Yeah, most. Some.
not all.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. I'm trying to find the name of the guy who was the Austrian. We could watch a video that shows all the streams of combat and the campaigns taking place, but it's like a 30-minute video. We don't have time to watch all of it. Let's see if I can do enough justice in summing it up for you guys. Long story short, an Austrian army with the Habsburg commander winds up going through the Holy Roman Empire, through all those little divided states that make it up, and hitting all of the Protestant ones, right? Particularly the Anabaptist ones to start off with.
Charles V.
That might be it.
So
Sounds right.
the Austrian Habsburg founded by Charles V, brother of Ferdinand.
Yeah, that's it. So they wound up, the Austrians put together an army that is a Catholic army. Its job, it's basically a crusade, right? But they're going after other Christians is what they're doing. And so they're going to run through the central part of Europe and hitting all of the Protestant lands and telling you you're either going to convert back to Catholicism or we're going to kill you. And I believe, is it Magdeburg is the name of the city? They come to one of the cities there in central Germany and they exterminate the whole city. They kill every man, woman, and child in the city. And when news of that reaches the king of Sweden, who was already a very staunch Lutheran, he assembles an army. And then he comes down from Denmark and comes down and he starts winning that campaign in the middle of Germany as the wars are going on. So, and all of this is happening at the same time that England is dealing with the Bloody Mary and the Spanish and the Netherlands are fighting each other over here, and that the French are over here killing all the 800,000 Protestants. Like, all of this is all happening at the same time, right? This is all within those 30 years. But anyway, so the line from the north would come down, and he would actually be very successful against the Austrians, would beat them in battle after battle after battle. And eventually, though, he would die from wounds in combat, I believe is what happens. He's wounded, and he dies from that. And then the battle starts going back the other way. Now the Catholic armies are starting to win, and so on and so forth. So you see that taking place. I believe that before the Swedish tried to do something, the Danes also tried to do something. They would also go Protestant. The Danes got their butts whooped really, really bad. And then when the Swedes step in, they come through and pick up the scraps of the Danish. And it really is. I mean, it is, as far as Europe is concerned, it's a world war based around Protestant Reformation. And Germany would lose more of its total population during the 30 Years' War than they lost during World War II. Yes. Think about that for a moment. Because remember, the Germans had the Russians coming in from the east. Right? And the Russians aren't exactly known as a merciful people, guys. And then, of course, you had, the things the Allies were doing went a whole lot better as far as the firebombing of Dresden and all of those things. Like, just think of the tatters that Germany is in at the end of World War II. That's the state of all of Europe by the time we get to what's called the Peace of Westphalia, right? So Westphalia is a little nation state that's in the middle of the Holy Roman Empire. It's kind of in between where it says Holy Roman Empire and Netherlands there. And it would be there that the people finally come together and decide, okay, we're going to leave everybody alone. Like Catholics, you're going to leave Protestants alone. Protestants, you're going to leave Catholics alone. We all still hate the Anabaptists, but everybody else leave each other alone, right? You think about it, 30 years, you're talking about a whole generation that has known nothing but war and starvation at that point for them to go that long. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy what all happens there. By the way, the Swedish king is also another one of those military commanders who's well known. He's a Protestant commander who's well known for his moral character, right? And again, pre-Protestant Reformation, you didn't really see that. The people that were great in power and great, had armies behind them, they weren't exactly known for being the most moral and upright people, right? They're usually the most corrupt and greedy and evil people. So, all right. The Holy Roman Empire actually would survive the 30 Years' War. All these different states, that conglomeration that would form that, would actually survive. Anybody know who would actually dismantle it? He's kind of famous. No? Nobody? About Napoleon, who was not short. Yeah, he was not short. No, that's political cartoons from England. It did that. Yeah. Napoleon, one of his great feats would be to dismantle the Holy Roman Empire, right? So, which would give birth to what would become modern Germany, right? So, that didn't end well, did it? 100 years later. All right.
That is kind of short for me.
What?
I would say.
Not at the time.
I'm sure.
Yeah. You gotta remember, we're giants compared to their standards.
You would have been salty.
Do what?
You would have been salty. These last ones.
How tall are you? Oh, yeah, you got 4 inches.
Well, according to this, his autopsy report, him as 5'2".
Ah, well, there you go. British had to keep it alive, huh? Yeah. All right. Let's see. The summation here that this says the 30 years war, this war between Catholics and Protestants disrupted life throughout Europe. And though the worst of the fighting was in Germany, the engraving above, which shows a picture of a city just being buried to the ground and bodies being strewn up like deer. Let's see. Though the fighting was the worst in Germany, the engraving depicts the Battle of Maddenberg. Yeah, there we go. That's the one I told you that they exterminated. Where most of the residents were executed. Then it's got a little political cartoon there. Yeah. All right. It does say that the Holy Roman Empire became a geographical term and lost its former political significance after the Peace of Westphalia, because its only unity had been religious, and the Reformation and the war had shattered that. This treaty stabilized the political and religious map of Europe, right? So it's one of the biggest treaties to come out of probably the last 400 years, honestly. It shaped the world just as much as the end of World War II did, right? It would reshape the world all the way up until Napoleon's time, when they started redrawing the line. The cost of the settlement was high. The population of Germany was cut by about 1/3, with the loss of several million lives. Property was destroyed in numerous battles and sackings. Towns and villages were completely wiped off the map. It took decades before Germany recovered from the devastation of the property, the loss of life, and the breakdown of morals that occurred during the 30 years. All right, where are we at? What time? 5:40. Okay. Questions, comments about all this? All good. You're good to go. What's the other thing? You got one?
No, I was just remembering 2 weeks ago, you mentioned Stingley.
Zwingli? Yes. We're getting there.
Austria, oh, we're not.
Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Yeah, Zwingli's in Switzerland. Which, like I said, even the Swiss would have their own wars. So I'll give you a little summation of Zwingli here in about 2 minutes, all right? So Zwingli is going to become Protestant following Luther and Calvin, right? He's going to, sure enough, he can read, he reads the New Testament. It's like, hey, you know what? These guys, what they're saying is right. The New Testament doesn't describe what we see in the Roman Catholic Church. And so Switzerland is going to become Protestant through democracy, right? It's actually going to be through the votes that they're going to become Protestant. Zwingli has 2 pupils, Felix Mons and Conrad Grebel. I want to look that up for me to be sure I have those 2 names right, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And those 2 are going to break away and become Anabaptists, which literally means rebaptizers. So those 2 are going to look at Luther and Zwingli and their interpretation of what the significance of baptism is, and they'll say, wait a minute, baptism doesn't confer any means of grace, it's purely symbolic. And baptism isn't supposed to be done to infants, it's supposed to be done to believers. That's what we see in the New Testament. And so they're going to literally, those 2 men are going to baptize each other in the river, right? Like it's the whole, there they go. And so, obviously, we as Baptists get our view of obviously we get it from Scripture, but we're going to very much fall in line with them in their view of baptism. That it's symbolic, doesn't convey any means of grace, and it's for the believer, right? The Presbyterians, the Calvinists aren't doing that yet, right? They're holding on to infant baptism. The Lutherans, they're holding on to infant baptism. Luther was willing to say, Luther did say this about infant baptism. He said, it obviously doesn't convey any grace upon the infant. It's symbolic, but we're going to keep going. That's what Luther's stance on it. Yeah.
So where does the belief that baptism gives you eternal life, that it saves you.
Oh, the Catholics have ingrained that in everybody's head by this time.
But
Yeah.
infant baptism in the Catholic Church
It comes to the Catholic Church, yes.
represents that they are saved for eternity.
It represents that they're saved until they're old enough. Right. They're saved until they're old enough to start doing the other Catholic works for salvation. Yeah. So
They died without period.
if an infant died without being baptized, they went to hell or purgatory. Yes. Which again is one of the reasons why the Pope was so powerful. If he excommunicated a nation, right? Say he excommunicated France, the churches all closed their doors. There's no more infant baptisms being done. Infant mortality rate during this time period is extremely high, right? Babies are dying all over the place if they're being born. And so they were literally believing that, well, my baby is in hell because the king of France can't get his act together with the Pope. And so that would lead to what? Rebellion. It started a war. It started a revolution. And so that's how the monarchs of Europe would bend the knee to the Pope during the medieval time period. Once the Reformation starts, that whole thing starts to unravel, right? Because there's no scriptural support for any of that. There's no scriptural support that baptism conveys grace. There's no scriptural support that infants should be baptized. None of that.
They're saints.
Right. So, was that right with the names? Stephen, Hans, Conrad, Grable? Yeah. I think both of them would wind up being killed as we move in the end of it. After all the battles are fought, I think they're executed by him. It would break off into literally wars over baptism in Switzerland. They would be fighting each other over this. So, aren't you glad you got a nice, peaceful town we live in where we're not having to worry about being invaded by the Catholics or the others to which point we've got to grab the guns and go take care of problems, you know? Yeah?
Just means be vigilant.
Be vigilant, that's right. We don't know. Most people are totally ignorant to the history of the Reformation. They maybe can tell you who Martin Luther was, and that's it. And there should be no excuse for that as Christians. We need to know our heritage. There's a lot of people that died to get us where we are today.
Amen.
A whole lot of people, millions of people died, so that we could sit in here today. Not even Americans, right? Our ancestors and Christ.
A lot of people don't know the scriptures,
That's true too.
just churches.
Yep. Yep. The laziest generation of all.
Or even the history of the United States, how it was founded on colleges and universities for learning the Bible.
That's right. Yes, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, right? All those old Baptist schools, if nobody knows we're Baptist.
Where have we gone?
A lot of places. Any other questions? All right, so we got the Netherlands covered, we got England covered, we got the 30 Years' War covered. Next week, we'll do Zoom. We'll get there next week. We'll start with him next week.
What year was William?
He's a contemporary of Luther and Calvin. This is all the same 100 years, right? Same century. So, yeah. All right. I think our time is up. So,
Thank you.
all right. Yeah. Tell you what, David, if you want to discuss this.